It's time for more coverage of the Bio Cup 2018. That's right, boys and girls. We are going to be covering round 1, or as it's more properly known as the Preliminaries of the Bio Cup 2018. Our coverage of this is not quite done. We've still got a bit more to talk about because round 2 is well underway, but as of the time I'm recording this episode, nobody's uploaded their round 1 entries yet. So, hurry up, guys. Or don't hurry up. Take your time. Don't rush. It's always best to take things slow and steady, because slow and steady wins the race. Anyway, besides the point, we, in this episode of the Bio Cup, are actually going to be reviewing... I guess you could say this is a 2-part episode, to a degree. Oh, I can finish with the to be continued. How exciting. Anyway, this is going to be an episode where we cover the people who didn't make it into the final round of the Bio Cup. And what I like about this is, in the past I've been sent mocks, and I used to look at it and be like, ugh, it's not very good, But I've realized, as I've continued on with BIS, and it's something that I'm really happy that I kind of discovered, is that even a mock that you may look at and you might think like, technically speaking, techniques-wise, parts-wise, whatever, like, there's not much to it. I still find there's actually a lot to learn. And I don't want to ever discredit the people who didn't make it into the next round of the Bio Cup, because, man, that does not mean that you are a bad builder in any way. It's like the judges said, there's 130 people that have entered. There's some tough competition. It's just a case of, hey, there are some other people, they were more suited for what the competition was about. It's like, say, if you enter a job interview, and actually think of a job interview like this, as well as not just a job interview, any kind of contest. The judges or the people who are about to hire you, they actually want you to succeed. They want you to win. It's not like when a guy walks in, they're like, oh man, I hope we just have some guy who's just utterly terrible. No, they want you to be the next guy who's going to wow them and be amazing in everything that they want, so they can pack up and go home and have the person that they're looking for the job finalized and done. Or in this case, if it's a contest, the judges, as we've already heard in the various Bionicle Inspiration Series podcasts that we've been doing, they want to see really cool stuff. So it's not a case of they want you to fail. They want you to succeed. So think about that. Everyone's on your side. Don't worry. Another thing as well, going back to that job interview example there, sometimes it's just other people who are slightly better for the job, but that doesn't mean that you are in any way less of a person or less qualified than someone else. Just means for that specific thing, there are some other people who are a little more qualified. But hey, if this was a job interview for something else that you really excelled in, then you're pretty good and you're set and you're well off. Plus as well, you got to remember, art is subjective. These things, one person's going to look at a mock and be like, wow, that is incredible, best thing I've ever seen. Someone else is going to look at it and go, I hate it, it's the scum of the earth. So it's just a perspective thing, Your mock is just as good as everyone else, and that's what I want to kind of talk about a little bit in this episode, is that, hey, just because these mocks didn't make the cut, there's still a lot we can learn from them, and there's still some pretty awesome mocks. So I've randomly selected a few mocks that sadly did not make it into the next round, and we're going to have a little bit of a chat about those mocks. So, without further ado, let's begin. So the first mock we have today is by Cubic, and his mock is called Rau the Jungle Man. I really like this mock. I think this is awesome. There's a really beautiful sort of distinction between where, at least the way I see it, where he has armor and where he's sort of more organic underneath. Now, obviously, the element that this man picked was jungle, and I think one of the coolest defining features about this mock is the fact that the jungle element is almost sort of piercing through the armor. It's like when you see all these sort of awesome photos and things where a flower's growing out of cement and it bursts its way through, something like that. It's awesome. I sort of see that with this mock. All the different vine elements and things like that, it almost sort of looks like that's in terms of the color blocking, the dark green is his skin and the black is his armor. So it almost looks like all those slime vine pieces and that are a part of his green skin, and they're sort of bursting through this armor, almost like his jungle elements are very powerful, and he's kind of growing out like a tree or something. I think that's awesome. I think it's a really unique, interesting take on the theme. I think that's great. It's also cool to see the distinction used in a different way on this mock, in terms of all of the black is quite a smooth texture, but then some of these vine pieces and stuff like that, they're a bit more of a kind of rough texture. And then again, I say that and some of them aren't, but that's sort of besides the point. There are at least a few aspects where you can see a bit of a distinction between the two, and you can kind of differentiate them. And I think that's some brilliant texture playing and some brilliant color blocking and stuff there. I think that's a really cool way to sort of distinctively show the difference between the armor and the element, as well as a great way to show off the element as a whole. So I think that's really cool. Another thing I think is really cool is just a subtle, nice addition, but these little pink dishes here on the heart and also on the arms here. Just works. It just looks nice. I don't know what it is about it. It's just nice to have that little accent color in there thrown in. It's just nice. It's just really cool. So yeah, I think this is a fantastic mock by Cubic. Let's move on to the next mock by Memes More Memes. And this mock is called A Puns. Now this mock has something very unique about it, and I really like it. It's that he has some prosthetic limbs, or cybernetic attachments as he calls them, and I think that's really cool. And again, what we were talking about before about sort of texture playing and color blocking and stuff like that, this mock also uses that in a very nice manner. So the actual prosthetic limbs or cybernetic enhancements, whatever you want to call them, they're silver, and there's not really that much silver on the rest of this mock. In fact, there kind of isn't. I mean, there's grey on the mock in other aspects, but the silver is sort of the more dominant colour on here. So it's really cool to have that massive contrast between colours there to really differentiate the difference between the two. I think that's a very clever way of doing that. And also I think that's cool in itself, is maybe you're building a mock and you sort of get to one part and you go, geez, I don't know how to do that. Who's to say that they don't have a robotic arm or a peg leg or cybernetic enhancements like this mock? I think that's really unique and really quite cool. Also some brilliant part usages there using the old Hero Factory 1.0 arm pieces, which ironically work quite well for sort of cybernetic enhanced leg of some kind. It's just works. Speaking of things that just work, I really like this leg design here with the orange Skrull armor placed over the top of one of those Hero Factory shells. To my knowledge, I'm not too sure, but I think the way that he's attached those is using the Flickfire missile piece to attach into the holes on the Skrull armor, and then of course the lightsaber rods just fit in nicely into the Hero Factory armor. I believe that's how that works. Might be wrong, but even still, that's a very clever connection, and they actually flow very nicely together, the way that it's attached there. So I think it's really cool. Something else that I really like and think is really cool is the torso. It's kind of, well, more specifically the waist with the whole torso. It's kind of angled slightly, and I think that achieves a really interesting shape, you know? Angling pieces like that is just a way to create a really unique design. I mean, in system we call it snot, studs not on top, to place pieces upside down on their side, things like that. And this is, to a degree, doing that. You know, it's placing a piece, you know, slightly angled in some fashion, and you're able to achieve a different result by angling pieces in a way. And so you get a kind of more interesting waist design here. I think that's pretty cool. I think that's it just looks nice. It's just a bit more interesting. It just looks cool. I think that's well done. And one other tiny little detail that I think is very subtle but very, very nice is if we look at the back of this mock, we can see he's actually used quite a lot of system here. I think that's very nicely done. But one little system piece he's used here that I love to see is this clip piece that's sort of at the top of the torso there. Ironically, I think that works really well because it flows very nicely with the Akar mask that he's used. Because the clip piece kind of in a way looks a little bit like the way that the fire on the mask is sort of flowing off. I don't know, they just sort of work nicely together. They sort of almost flow into each other in some degree. And I just think that looks cool. I think that's cool. It's a great way to kind of have some unity and flow throughout the mock with sort of reoccurring shapes and textures and things like that. So that's really cool. I think that's very nicely done. So awesome entry to the Bio Cup. Let's look at another one by Thomas Higgins 7, and this mock is called StoneSlinger 2.0. Now, what I love so much about this mock is how well he's utilized some printed pieces. So he's put some of these Shore Trooper printed sort of shin guard pieces there on the back, and to me it kind of looks like this sort of robotic jetpack or like a kind of backpack like you might see on a sand trooper over on Tatooine in Star Wars. I don't know, it just looks cool. It looks like some sort of device, some kind of mechanical thing, and it kind of paints a bit of a picture for me. I'm trying to, figure out what it is. I think it just looks cool. It's a very nice addition, especially with the sort of aesthetic that this mock seems to have, with the cape and things like that. He sort of seems to be kind of like a bounty hunter or a traveler or something like that, and I just think that fits very well. And if you didn't have the printing on there, I don't know if it would communicate as well that it is this sort of backpack or jetpack design on his back there. So I think that's really, really clever and a great way of using printed pieces. And it's also cool to see how the printed pieces almost in a way kind of transition onto the torso to some degree. There's at least a concentrated area of printed parts on this mock, and it works well, and it's just effective. I like that. Another thing that works well and is very effective is the torso design on this. This sort of segmented abdomen going down there. It's just nice. Yeah, it just looks cool. Something about it, I don't know, I just like it. Another thing I like about this mock is it's quite a simple overall frame. You can essentially see how it's made. It's just a lot of CCBS pieces all sort of layered and placed throughout here. It just looks really nice. It works really well. But you're still able to get a very nice look with it. And it's a great way of sort of showing the versatility of CCBS as a system and as a whole. And it's cool to see the ways that he's managed to continue to add on and upgrade, even though he's just used a CCBS frame. You know, adding these knees here on the legs, which is just simply done using one of those pneumatic tube pieces there to put onto the upper legs, and it's a really effective knee design. It works really well. And even just this custom foot design there, simple, effective, it just works. Some very, very, very nicely done stuff here, creating a very awesome character. One quick final thing before we move on is this awesome gun design. Pistons work surprisingly well for the barrels of a gun. Very, very cool. Nothing's cooler than dual wielding guns also. So very nicely done, Mr. Thomas Higgins 7. Let's move on to the bonus mark, which is by the Night Howler and is called Exy the Elemental Dragon. Now this is very, very cool. Something I like about it is, and we've kind of mentioned this already in a few other episodes of the Bionicle Inspiration series, is the amount of room that you have to play with when you just decide to combine all the elements. You know, the theme obviously of the Preliminaries was elements, so if you're able to just you don't even have to pick one, you pick them all and put them onto a mock. There's ironically a lot of room to play with, and I think this mock does that in some fun ways. So if we take a look at all these individual heads here, obviously they sort of mirror the elements of the Protectors and their elemental beasts from Bionicle G2. That's very, very cool. And you get some, nice room to play with there, you know, like this rock head here. He's got all these cool horns sticking out, and, you know, you can kind of see some vines sticking out of the back of the jungle head there, and all sorts of things like that. You kind of get to play around a lot there. And another cool thing, too, is you're able to just experiment and play around with colors. Obviously, it's a beast that controls a lot of different elements, and so kind of just, playing around with all the different colors that you want to put into the color scheme. It works. You're able to play around with that, and it's also really cool because you don't have to worry so much about pieces. I had a conversation with Shadowgear once where he was saying he built a mock. He just wanted to build something, but he didn't necessarily have the parts that he wanted, and so he just decided that he was just going to throw on a whole bunch of pieces and not even worry about the color scheme. And he ended up showing me the mock, and color scheme wise, it was all over the place. But the shapes and the techniques that he was able to achieve with pieces that definitely didn't work as a coherent color scheme, it was actually really impressive. And seeing the end result, I definitely thought, man, I kind of wish I'd built a mock like that, because that just looks fun, being able to play around with amazing techniques like that. So, I don't know, maybe that's something to think about and give a bit of a go, is to just play around with colors. And, you know, maybe if you're building something and you're waiting on some parts, you know, you can't continue on with this one specific part of the mock you're building until until the Bricklink order arrives in the mail and you get this one specific piece in one specific color. Well, who knows, maybe you can play around with some other colors while you wait. And then, of course, when you get those pieces later, you can replace them with the colors that it needs to be, just so that you're able to move on and just keep building. And heck, maybe just for some laughs, you can pick up a whole bunch of randomly colored pieces and play around and see if you can come up with some cool techniques. Never know what you might achieve. So yeah, why put that barrier on there? You know, if you want a coherent color scheme, of course, stick to it. But if you don't want a coherent color scheme, nothing's stopping you there. Anyway, besides the point, very big, menacing, fun Hydra Dragon here. Just cool to see people playing around with the versatile CCBS system, making a really awesome Hydra Dragon mock like this. So 4 really cool entries into the Bio Cup here, and like I was saying, there's an awesome amount of stuff that I myself, looking at these, learnt from it. You know, taking a look at the Night Howler Elemental, or Night Howler's Elemental Dragon. Yeah, just even gave me a few thoughts about just kind of learning a bit with playing with techniques and just having fun. Heck, you know, just play around with your color schemes. Maybe it's a little less important. It's a great way to just continue to learn and grow. We take a look at Thomas Higgins' mock here, and we can see the versatility of a plain CCBS frame and how you are able to continue to advance on it. And heck, look how cool printed pieces work on a mock. Take a look at Apun's, this mock. Very cool to see some cybernetic enhanced legs. What a clever design. Very, very unique, very, very cool. And then we take a look at Cubics Mock. What a great way to play around with textures and this really cool effect of sort of growing vines coming out of a mock. There's a lot of really interesting things that I learned from seeing these mocks. So very, very cool. Very, very awesome. Just because you didn't make it into the next round of the Bio Cup doesn't mean your mocks are bad. They are fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed reviewing them. Also as well, don't forget, if you didn't make it into the next round of the Bio Cup, you are still eligible for the raffle. So you might still win something. Awesome. Anyway, besides the point, that's it for this episode, and as we continue our coverage of the Bionicle Inspiration Series, Bio Cup 2018 coverage, of course we will have more episodes of the traditional Bionicle Inspiration Series show coming up at the regular scheduled time of Saturday, at whatever time I decide to upload, which is normally nighttime for me, but I think that's morning for you guys. I don't know. It depends where you live, too. I assume everyone's from America. Most people are. Besides the point. That's it for this episode. Next time on Dragon Ball Bionicle Inspiration Series, we will be covering the winners of the Bio Cup 2018 preliminary round. To be continued.